Hey guys, it's Gala Avery from the Video Archives podcast. While we're shuffling tapes and gearing up for season 2, Quentin and Roger have sent me on a mission all around Los Angeles and beyond to talk with filmmakers, photographers, VHS collectors, and other interesting characters. What are we going to be talking about? Well, that's up for my guests to decide. On The Gala Show, guests have 30 minutes to talk about whatever topic they want you to know about. Filmmakers like Josh Miller will tell us how he found his tribe, while writers like Larry Karaszewski will let you know what he considers to be a true LA movie. VHS collectors like Connor Holt make an argument for the genre of pirate movies, while writers like Josh Olson are going to let us in on what he considers to be right-wing cinema. Actors like Percy Hines White will share his love of outsider art, while animators and cartoonist Sierra Nielli will reminisce on his experiences of growing up in a Philly pizza shop and how this time in his life influenced him to pick up a pencil. So, join me every Thursday for a new guest with an entirely new topic. The Gala Show premieres October 26th, available wherever you get your podcasts. On this episode of the Video Archives podcast, Roger and Quentin pull off one last job in the last run. On our very first bootleg tape of the show, Video Archives' favorite George C. Scott returns to the screen. A former mob getaway driver has retired to the peaceful Portuguese coastline, but there's a growing feeling in him that he just can't shake. He has to know if he still has it in him, and to figure that out, he takes one last job. Quentin and Roger unravel the mystery of the double bill directors, pick apart the history of the making of the movie, and talk about what makes this heist film work. Next up, Yeehaw! The Wild West goes wacko in Rustlers Rhapsody. Rex O'Herlihan, played by Tom Berenger, is a fast-drawn, silver-spurred, guitar-playing, singing cowboy who breaks the fourth wall and becomes aware that every town he rides into is the same as the last. An ode to kiddie matinees, Quentin shares vivid stories of the genre from theaters long shuttered. The duo discuss the gorgeous way this movie is shot, the affectionate parody this film brings, and the dilemma with faith of self. And lastly, the oddest film we've covered on the podcast yet, The Jet Benny Show. Shot on Super 8, there's just no way to describe this Jack Benny impersonation and Star Wars spoof rolled into one. So I'm going to let the guys take it from here. My name is Gala Avery, and joining us now, here's Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery.
Okay, thank you, Gala, and welcome to the Video Archives podcast. I'm your host, Quentin Tarantino, along with
Roger Avery.
And tonight's first movie is Richard Fleischer's from 1971, The Last Run, starring one of our returning champions, along with Jack Palance and Rod Steiger, one of our favorite leading men here at the Video Archives podcast, George C. Scott.
George C. Scott stars in The Last Run, which, along with co-hit Rustlers Rhapsody, will be playing on jaw-dropping 35mm film for 2 nights on Tuesday, March 21st and Wednesday, March 22nd. 7165 Beverly Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90036. For more information, visit thenewbev.com. The New Beverly Cinema, always on film.
It's actually written by one of my favorite screenwriters, a Scottish writer named Alan Sharp. Now, he's mostly known for the Westerns that he wrote. He wrote Ozana's Raid, which is actually my very favorite Western of the 70s. He wrote the Peter Fonda Western, which is also very terrific, The Hired Hand. Mm-hmm. And he wrote the movie with Gregory Peck, Billy Two Hats, which is actually kind of a mediocre movie, but you can tell how great the script is.
I always thought of him as the guy who brought me Damnation Alley.
Yes, of course. He did Damnation Alley. Yes, absolutely. He did Damnation Alley.
Yeah. The thing about Damnation Alley, and I mean, one, that was like, for me, the ultimate Roger movie. It would be great to cover that movie at some point. But they used to have that Damnation Alley truck,
the truck
on Cahuenga there.
Oh, I mean, for like 15 years.
Yeah, forever. It was there. It felt like it was there forever.
No, it was
some like movie vehicle rental.
It
place.
Absolutely was. I mean, back when we were making movies in the 80s, if we were trying to finance them other than a minimum wage job, which we were always financing our movies via our minimum wage job, which is Chris Rock says, they would pay you less, except it's against the law. If we had any kind of like mad money that we could have spent, we could have easily rented the Damnation Alley truck, drove out to Angela Crest Mountains
and made a little movie.
And made some fucking dystopian future fucking movie, all right? But that's what Fred Olen Ray would do.
Yeah.
You know, he would like, you know, we'll go out and, you know, we'll basically do a ripoff of Beast from the Haunted Cave, and I'll go out and I'll rent the Damnation Alley truck for the weekend. And away we go, you know?
I wish we had done that.
Yeah, for a period of time there in the 70s, Alan Sharp was a very, very successful screenwriter, you know, able to get 4 different screenplays, not only like made, but without anybody else monkeying with them and getting another writer on it. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal, especially back then, to be as idiosyncratic a writer as he was, and to have like 4 movies made from his. That's not even to mention a movie actually I don't like, but everyone else seems to love.
Moves?
Night Moves. I don't like Night Moves. I think it's really boring, but everyone else seems to love it.
I'm kind of with you on I
even tried to watch it this year.
It's no Damnation Alley.
I even tried to watch it this year, and I couldn't get through it, actually.
Right.
Okay, so now this box is interesting. Okay, so this is not from the Video Archives collection. This is a bootleg that I think I bought from Eddie Brandt's when they would sell off some stuff. Like the places that would sell off bootlegs would be Eddie Brandt or Kim's Video.
Yeah, Kim's Video.
But Kim's Video's always had a uniform look. I think this is an Eddie Brandt's, and you can tell that it's a Xerox copy from a British tape, because you have the 18.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Number on there. All right.
It's like CSI.
Yeah, and it was taken from an MGM UA home video. And the back of the box says, George C. Scott stars as a retired gangster who can't resist one last assignment to drive an escaped prisoner across Spain to France. High-speed chases over treacherous mountain passes follow as it develops into a race against the law and the underworld. What's strange about that description is it's one of the shortest descriptions we've ever read, but in one way or another, it kind of describes the plot. We can decide how much more detail we want to go into it, but that actually describes the plot.
Yeah, to a T.
The Last Run is a gangster movie. It is about where George C. Scott plays a fellow who was more or less, I guess, a getaway driver. He's a criminal specialist, and he's a wheelman. And he's been more or less retired for the last 9 years. It's revealed in the film that at some point his 3-year-old son died. That's extremely touching, especially for me who has a 2.5-year-old son at home. His 3-year-old son died, and then seemingly his whole life kind of fell apart after that. His marriage fell apart, and he had money. He had done good for himself as a wheelman. So he kind of retired from the business and just kind of drops out of life as we know it. He moves to Portugal, buys a fishing boat, and just has this like fisherman guy, Aldo Sombrell, the great Aldo Sombrell from Italy, from Navajo Joe, is his fisherman. And he just lives this like really kind of nice little life in Portugal, in this little village. And it's a nice little life, but it's also no life at the same time. And after 9 years, enough time has passed. He could die tomorrow and he wouldn't care. He's just taking up space. But he decides that he wants to do one more job, not for the money. There's money involved, but he's not doing it for the money. It's just, he's ripened on the vine the last 9 years so much. He wants to do another job just to see if he can do another job. Are his motor reflexes the same? Is his mind the same? Can he keep together? Can he not panic? Can he not lose control? He wants to think like a professional on the job again. You almost get the impression he wants to do it. He wants to be successful at it. He wants to pull it off, and then he'd probably kill himself. You kind of get the impression that that's where he's coming from.
When he's gunning that car down the road and practicing, you kind of feel like, well, if I crash, I crash.
Yeah, who cares?
Who gives a fuck?
Who gives a fuck? Yeah, exactly. So George C. Scott is hired to ferry some guy from organized crime from one place to another. And it turns out that the organization has arranged a prison escape. and during the escape, the guy hops into George C. Scott's car, and it's George C. Scott's job to ferry him where he's supposed to go. And so then the guy also said, hey, we have a change of plans. I have to pick up my girl. And so they pick up his girl, who's played by Trish Vanderveer in the film. And then the rest of the movie is the back and forth relationship between this old timer, who's the driver, this young, obnoxious, greasy punk.
A wild, seemingly unpredictable.
Yeah. A hitman. He's a hitman.
He's a killer.
Yeah, I go bang, bang, and the lights go out. And his girl, who on one hand seems like an appendage, on the other hand, sometimes seems like just like, the go-to girl. And then on other hands, it seems like she's the mastermind behind everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there is a neat Jackie Brown aspect about the fact that she's manipulating both the Tony Musante character, who's playing the gangster, and she's manipulating the George C. Scott character. And like Jackie Brown, you never know who she's being honest with. She's lying to somebody, or else she's telling both of them the truth all the time. That lets you also not know where she's coming from.
But she's definitely more in charge than she lets on.
Absolutely.
And she might really be in charge, because one thing I really like about the whole the break and the whole setup is that we don't get any kind of exposition that you would normally get. Like, there's no meeting of the guys who are going to do the break. You have no idea what's happening.
We know he has a job, but we don't know what the job is.
And it's very
until it reveals itself.
And it's very realistic, because if you're really doing a crime, you want to have almost like cells. You want to have everybody compartmentalized. And so his job is just to drive. You be here at this time, and the guy will come to you. Yeah. You put him in your car and you split and you take him here.
Yeah.
Like, that's all he needs.
If the guards catch him, that's not your fault. Okay. You just get the fuck out of there.
Then you take off, and no one's the wiser for it. And so then we see these events happening that are kind of, we slowly realize, those are the other Confederates that he's never met.
Yes.
Who are actually just fulfilling their part of the job. And it's really kind of realistic.
It's extremely realistic. And the movie also, Roger and myself are big fans of Richard Fleischer, who's like really one of those Hollywood directors where journeyman and artist meet. All right. Yeah. Sometimes it's terrific polished journeyman work, and sometimes, in the case of Mandingo, it's just true decadent art.
Yeah. I mean, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes, exactly. And then the
Fantastic Voyage.
And the thing, absolutely Fantastic Voyage. He's an assignment guy. He was Daryl Zanuck's guy forever and ever and ever. And then he became Dino De Laurentiis' guy,
In fact, he was replacing a director on this film.
Absolutely. But the thing about it is, naturally, me and Roger like him because as opposed to a lot of these fellows out there like that, like Tom Grise or whatever, Fleischer obviously had a flair for lurid material. He had a flair for punchy shit.
That's so true.
If you were talking about great sequences from Fleischer's movies, his epic of Howard Fass's novel Barabbas.
Oh, yeah.
With Anthony Quinn. So you go the whole story of Barabbas, but at some point, he's a slave, and him and Victoria Gossman are slaves. And at some point, they're thrown in as cannon fodder for gladiatorial purposes. Jack Palance plays like Rome's greatest gladiator of all time. And then there are two slaves that are thrown in there just to be, massacred by him, for spectacle for the Romans. And that whole sequence, because the whole film, more than the pious biblical epics coming out of Hollywood, it had more of a peplum, more of an Italian feel. But then that section is the greatest peplum section I've never seen in a peplum.
I just have to mention, in preparing for this, I wanted to just watch a few scenes from Fleischer movies. And so one of the scenes I popped on was for Tora Tora Tora. And it was the attack sequence. I just wanted to see the spectacle of a Hollywood professional, a true like workman, craftsman comes up.
But with all the 20th Century Fox special effects money at his disposal for that era.
For that era, everything behind him. And there is this scene where this airplane crashes into other airplanes. And during the attack, It's harrowing.
Oh yeah, I actually remember that from the
you
TV
see
spot.
These extras kind of running from the flaming wreckage.
It looks like
it's
that.
Incredible.
It looks like that actual newsreel footage of the Hindenburg crashing when you see those people running as the thing is like literally crashing right behind
like
them.
running and falling, like like you would think I wouldn't do, and you do. It's such a harrowing, intense sequence. It's so powerful. I mean, this is...
And wings of planes just flying off by the camera lens.
Yeah, I mean, Fleischer was a guy who could handle it big, and then he could dial it in close on a movie like 10 Rillington Place.
And again, we still haven't even talked about any specific scenes in Mandinga, which I think is just one of the most artistic and lurid movies made by a studio ever, of all time. Anyway, so back to The Last Run. I believe you have a Franklin Bruner review.
He did a little capsule review that easily could have been pulled from the back of the Canadian release of this movie on the VHS box of that. But probably not. It must have been
It's from the Winnipeg Press?
Probably from the Winnipeg City Press. George C. Scott plays a getaway driver who's tried to leave the business and live a normal rural life with the woman he loves. But fate won't have it, and he must come back into a changed business where the thieves have forgotten honor, and it befalls on him to remind them of it. Needless to say, there is some terrific driving through a Nickvistian landscapes as bleak as our anti-hero's empty and longing soul. If you liked The Driver and its practical remake Drive, then you'll like it Behind the Wheel of The Last Run. R for reverse doesn't work.
Very short, sweet, and right to the point with the head scratching ending. If Bogart were able to make movies in the 70s, I can totally see Bogart playing this role.
Well, he was coming off of Patton.
Yeah.
And so he was like Academy Award winning George C. Scott. He did a bunch of TV stuff and then this, like right afterwards. And I suspect he must have had a piece in this because it seemed like he was dictating the shots on it.
It does.
He was hiring directors. He was firing directors. He was hiring his co-stars and firing his co-stars.
Normally I don't like to mention facts that are on IMDb because you basically don't listening to the show for us to repeat fucking IMDb. Unfortunately, most of the stuff that I've always known about The Last Run is on IMDb and their trivia is, and what it is that originally the director of the movie was John Huston, and he'd been attached for some time, and him and George C. Scott had done a couple of movies together, The List of Adrian Messenger and The Bible, and Huston wanted a rewrite to the script, which pisses Alan Sharp off to this day. George C. Scott said, no, there will be no rewrite to the script. This is the script I said yes to. You can fucking leave it alone. All right. And then he didn't like the European actresses that they were trying to cast as the girl in the movie. So
to fulfill their European co-production.
Yes,
probably.
Exactly. And so he shit-canned them. All right. And then he ended up telling the producers, it's either Huston or me. And so they fired Huston. And George C. Scott brought on Richard Fleischer, and then Fleischer and Scott loved each other and worked together many times since. They're in Cross Swords together. Right. They do the New Centurions together. One of Scott's biggest movies of the 70s is the New Centurions. It's an American production. Even though the writer is Scottish, it has an American feel, a tough guy, American staccato feel.
And George C. Scott brings that.
And he brings that,
He brings America to this movie.
But Tony Mastanti brings America to it, too. I mean, so does... I agree that it shouldn't have been a Claudia Cardinelli type. It's good that Trish Van Devere is American. So they're all bring this American thing. Yet... it really resembles a European crime film because it all takes place in Europe and the European cars and the European roads and the European mountain roads. It has a French crime film kind of feel. It has an Italian, it could be a Fernando de Leo kind of picture, except with the class of an American studio production.
You even have an American composer, Jerry Goldsmith, doing an Italian Morricone style score.
I think his theme for The Last Run is one of his best themes.
It's a beautiful theme.
I have the theme. I have the soundtrack album. I found myself playing it like 2 days later. All right. And played the whole damn album because it was so good. It's a wonderful soundtrack album if you get it. But it's totally Jerry Goldsmith doing Morricone, but doing it beautifully.
Yeah.
Doing it beautifully.
I wanted to call out Sven Nykvist, who is this is his first English language movie, I understand. And it's fantastic. He makes this bleak.
It's exquisite.
Franklin Browner says it all when he says like Sven Nykvist's bleak kind of landscapes that really reflect the character.
Now, by the way, though, I'm not the biggest fan of that cinematographer when he does studio movies. Oftentimes I find them kind of pretentious the way he shoots them. I find the look of Cannery Row pretentious. I find the look of the
it was a very modern looking film when it was made. Cannery Row.
The Postman Always Rings Twice.
A little murky.
Yeah, I find it pretentious. I mean, but I love it in The Last Run. I love the last.
It's textural.
The look of it.
It's textural.
It doesn't feel like a Hollywood studio film, except in all the pizzazz it has. Russell
Lloyd, the guy who did the editing, I think deserves a little special gold star, because this movie has one of the best cuts in it that I've seen in a long time, and it's that impact where George C. Scott,
oh my God,
drives his 1956 BMW 503 convertible, which is like a very rare car, and he's just trashing it by like dirt roading it through the movie practically. And at one point he uses it like a weapon, and he just nails this fucker, this guy, in one of the most convincing car human collisions I have ever witnessed. It was so freaking intense.
And I think that, you know why
I asked you to play it back for me.
Yeah. And I think the reason the impact cut works, but I think the reason that the shot before it works so well is I think it's one of those things is when the car hit the stuntman, I think the stuntman flew to the left further than anyone expected him to fly, and the camera operator just was deaf enough to catch it.
Sven Nykvist himself probably.
Yes, exactly. Probably himself was deaf enough to catch it. It's just going on a little further than you would expect, thus making it more realistic, thus giving it more time to actually be able to do the impact cut.
And when they match,
if it happened sooner, you wouldn't know what you saw.
Yeah, and when they match cut it to his landing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so effective and so riveting. These are the kind of, visual effects we used to get when you couldn't just do it all in post.
But this is all.
You did it through cinema, the power of cinema, the power of a simple cut.
The thing about The Last Run is, it came out in 1971 when it came out. I don't think it was a complete flop, but it wasn't necessarily what you'd call a popular hit or anything like that. It was probably just okay. But that was back when, double features were that was the way people saw movies, and that's the way studios put movies together. So the thing is, a studio like MGM would have a film like The Last Run. It came out, it does what it does, but it's the perfect film for the second film on an MGM double feature.
Yeah, because it's good enough to be the first film.
Yes, it's good enough to be the first one. But frankly, to tell you the truth, it's even a little better as the second film. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The modesty of it actually fits into the second slot kind of perfect. And there's a modesty to the film. The point of this whole story is The Last Run ended up being, in its own way, quite popular, and actually ended up being seen by many people, because The Last Run was a very popular second film on the double feature bill for like 5 years. There was all these movies that actually, if you just look at their box up, because they don't really get any money for being the second film. All right. They made their money when they were the top film.
It's a loss leader.
Yes, exactly. So if you're just looking at box office figures, you would have no idea that some of these movies literally played for 5, 6, 7 years as the lower half of films. And God knows how many people saw them. I mean, all kinds of eyeballs ended up seeing those movies over a 5-year period.
Well, if you love an existentialist crime film, as I do, I mean, this is like the kind of exactly.
Well, one of the things that I said,
up my alley.
One of the things I think I said when we were watching it, I go, oh, wow. This could almost be, if Jean-Pierre Melville was making his first English language movie, this could almost be that.
Yeah, in fact,
if you said it was, I'd believe you.
Yeah, absolutely, because Melville also had that Hollywood, or I don't want to call him a Hollywood professional. He was a Paris professional.
Yeah.
He had that workman-like, that craftsman-like quality as a filmmaker.
I will say it's less self-conscious than Jean-Pierre Melville did it. There's no more to talk about the story of the last run, frankly, to kind of
give away all of the
give away the charm. All right, because I mean,
the great twists and turns.
It has a very slight story, but like the route that George C. Scott is planning, it's a straight ahead line, but with major turns, and everything changes when you make those major turns. One of the things, if you're a listener of the show, if you liked what a companion piece to the last run would probably be Hennessy.
Absolutely.
They almost seem like opposite numbers
and by
of
the
each
way,
other. Scale, action-wise, deliverance of
and
of
Rod Steiger and George C. Scott easily could have switched roles and both enjoyed each other in each other's movie.
Easily could have switched roles. And as far as like the like I said, our returning champions, it seems like George C. Scott and Rod Steiger like own this spot in their own way that's interchangeable.
Those are some pretty tough men.
With Scott, just like Steiger, you never exactly know who's exactly going to show up when you see a Steiger movie. I mean, you see a Steiger movie and you see something like The Illustrated Man, you get bravado and you get all those ripe line readings and you get just muscularing it up.
You get the opposite in The Loved One with Dr. Joyboy.
Well, actually, you don't get the opposite. You just get the quirky comedic version. There's nothing subtle about what he's doing as Joyboy. But then when you get to Hennessy, he kind of knows his role in Hennessy isn't to emote to the moon and isn't to chew the scenery. It's to tell this tough little story.
Same with Dirty Hands.
Yeah, and it's exactly. And the last run is very similar. This is not the George C. Scott of Rage, and this is not the George C. Scott of Patton, and it's definitely not the George C. Scott emoting to the moon in The Hospital, which I love.
Have you ever wondered what the lead singer of Smash Mouth, Zach Goody, feels about new versus old guys in music and cinema? Or how photographer Toasty Cakes makes his cinematic discoveries? What about the opinion of Rotten Tomatoes editor Jacqueline Coley and what she considers to be the new Hollywood shift of the streaming era? Join me, reporter on the beat Gala Avery, as I get to the bottom of these very questions. Starting on October 26th, I have a new guest on the mic every week. Yes, every Thursday, hear your favorite filmmakers, photographers, actors, models, and more talk about a topic that is near and dear to their heart that they want you to know about. You'd be surprised at what people are interested in. The Gala Show premieres October 26th with new episodes every Thursday, available wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back, and we're joined by Gala Raquel Avery. Hello, Gala.
Hello, Quentin. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Gala.
So, Quentin, let's talk about this VHS tape a little bit because I'm sitting here like gnashing my teeth because I don't have one. I can't find this on VHS, and
I don't know if it came out in America.
So it didn't. So I asked a few of my VHS collector friends, thank you guys, who told me that it does not have a VHS release in the United States and that it was such a flop that it didn't get one. And I'm really upset about it because I want one.
What's funny is the beginning of this tape, didn't it have like an additional...
yeah, it did. No,
by special arrangement, this is a copy, licensed copy.
No, it makes a point of, with that, which is not the case with the copy I'm watching, which is obviously a bootleg, but it makes a point of saying at the beginning, this is not a second generation copy. This is, basically made by MGM UA for you to rent. And then it has the standard warning, but with completely different verbiage that goes into great detail of what you can do and what you can't do.
Yeah, just have Jimmy in the mailroom write that. It's just because it's completely unlike anything I've read.
You are allowed to show this movie in your house to your friend. You are not allowed to invite people over, charge them admission.
So I clearly did not watch this on VHS. I watched this on Amazon Prime, and I feel like I did something illegal here because it only cost me 74 cents to watch this movie with a promotional credit. I don't know why, but I feel like I should have paid a lot more to watch this.
It's like they're still pushing it as a secondary loss leader, even today.
Okay. If you rent the last run, you get to watch the movie and you get a free bowl of soup.
Okay, so 2 seconds in, I'm like, okay, this might be what we call a gala movie. And then 18 minutes in when he's at the church, I'm like, oh my God, I love this movie already. Like, I'm sold.
Yeah, I knew that this was going to fall into your whole...
Into my category, because one of my favorite genres is heist gone wrong. And this is like bordering, I mean, there's no heist in it, but it's like a bordering on that genre. And
there's kind of a heist. It's breaking that guy free.
Assignment gone wrong.
Assignment gone wrong. There you go. I should change my favorite genre. Okay, so the driving is great.
Actually, I would make a case, though. The assignment doesn't go wrong. Things happen. He's 100% successful in his assignment. Say no more, but he is 100% successful in his assignment.
You're right.
He did what he wanted to do.
And he did it to the T.
Yeah, what he said to the imaginary priest, he did.
Yeah, exactly. So the driving is so beautiful, specifically that opening, like after he's like fixed his car and he's driving. I love that.
Exquisite.
It's gorgeous. And people always say like the Italian Job is having like really good driving, but like
I don't agree.
I don't agree. Look at The Last Run.
It's overrated. That is, I've always think that movie's overrated.
It's not one of my favorites.
When I first
I do like Michael Caine. I told you to blow the bloody doors off. Okay, continue.
The driving in this and just the car itself, because this is just a lovely car, and that it's a convertible, and
it's a surprising vehicle. Like you don't imagine that this car in particular would be the hero car.
It's a sporty little foreign job, man. It gets in, gets out. One of the things that it's so great in the second half of the movie when he actually gets into genuine car chases.
Yeah.
All right. Where he's being chased by the bad guys and they're on these treacherous mountain roads in Europe. The thing that's so fucking exciting about it is George C. Scott doesn't care if he dies.
Yeah.
All right. And not only does he not care if he dies, at the end of the day, he doesn't care if he kills the two people in the car with him. But the gangsters chasing him don't want to die. So they're not quite taking the blind turns on the mountain road the way he is.
Well, that fantastic chase that goes through that little village where they're... Yeah. I mean, actually, as we were watching it, we were noticing how Richard Fleischer tells a story with a single shot.
Yes.
And so he would do an establishing shot of like their car pulling into whatever village they're in Spain, and a guy, a bunch of sheep and
it was a bunch of goats.
A bunch of goats and a goat herder guy would kind of walk through the frame.
And that just lets us know that it's a primitive village.
Yeah,
as opposed to Antwerp or someplace like
later
that.
Later on, they go to a different place, which is supposed to be like the bigger city. It's like suddenly there's cosmopolitan people and they're walking around for dinner in the foreground. They're just like, and so he's always like grabbing whatever elements and putting them into the movie to kind of create the scene. That was probably the same
director.
That was probably the same location. That was probably their crew hotel. And he just,
I completely agree. It's like,
just efficient.
You go to those kind of little villages, and those little cobblestone villages can actually be a metropolis, or they can actually be a little thing.
It's all the people who are walking. It's the life that you create around it. It's the dressing that you do.
Yeah, but just having that little cobblestone inn, and then a goat herder walks by with 20 goats, all right? All of a sudden you think, oh, primitive little village, all right? And now you're in the story, and now you know. Okay, well, they're in some back alley hamlet.
So George C. Scott, I have to wonder, because you guys said maybe he had like some stake in this film. What is up with him and sons? Like the loss of a son cinematically, because in Rage, he also loses his son. And I looked up.
And also he loses his wife and son in The Changeling.
Yeah, and it's heart-wrenching, but all of his children are, I think, still living.
Oh, yeah.
So I wonder, like, where this theme, like, does it come from him, or is it just something that he finds himself in as an actor repeatedly, or is it just...
I think it's just
it's effective.
It's a good dramatic, he's stomping down on the molten lava that is inside of George C. Scott's soul is his stock and trade.
Yeah.
And sometimes the movie is about him keeping a hold of the lava, and sometimes the movie is about it erupting. Okay, so in hardcore, it's about it erupting. Here, it's about putting a lid on the lid of the volcano and letting it simmer and boil. There was this aspect that I remember thinking about it immediately as me and Roger were watching the film. The first image of George C. Scott, which is kind of his eagle face, in the garage pit underneath, the car, working on it. And his grimace, even though he wasn't grimacing, he was just kind of working on his car. But the grimace was like the grimace he has on his face when he's carrying his son, running through the field to get his son to the car in rage.
Just a man brimming with anger.
But I would actually have to say again, look, since I've become a father, I've just become the biggest softie in the world. But I mean, I recognize his anguish. My son is 2.5 years old. His son is 3 when he died. I can't even imagine it. I can't even imagine. It was disturbing to imagine. It ripped my heart out just thinking about it. There's something sweet in the movie also about the fact that those tragedies hit him so hard. And it's interesting that he hasn't killed himself. It's interesting, this life that he tried to negotiate, that he actually did. He actually negotiated, and he lived it for 9 years. If you even think about another, like this being a second movie of his story, this is a happily ever after. He pulled his last job, and then he retired to this village, and he never got caught, and he had enough money, and he was able to live a life. And now we pick up this story 9 years later, but it means nothing to him.
Yeah, none of it worked out.
Yeah, he has this really, speaking of the script, is so
it's existential.
Good.
Yeah, he's on it. He's having an existential crisis, and while he's been away in those 9 years, the business has changed.
Yeah.
Behaviors have changed. People's professionalism, will double crosses abound everywhere in this world all of a sudden. And he seems like he's, the old timer.
He actually, Quentin, to your point, has this line where he says that for the past 9 years, he's been trying to disappear into the landscape. And then he's been trying. He was a boat captain for a while. It just didn't work. Like, he's not from there. And then he says, I'm just one of those people who just don't belong anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's such a good, the script is, oh my God, it's I love it.
I'm telling you, you got to see the other Alan Sharp movies, man. He's one of the best screenwriters of the 70s.
My notes this time are mostly just quotes, the guy from Bird of the Crystal Plumage.
Tony Musante. Yeah.
Tony Musante. He, about George C. Scott's character, says, it's like the guys, they pull out a solitary. They don't know how to talk anymore about George C. Scott. And it's so good because he's put himself into solitary.
To hint at the last moment of the movie without revealing it, a line is said that refers to Scott that you don't like. It's ugly and it's bitter and it's cynical, and you don't like the character for saying it, but he's not
wrong.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And wow, how cool is it to watch a crime film that can hold two different thoughts in its head at the exact same time?
Well, it was,
both be right.
Yeah.
It was kind of striking because when it first started off and Tony Musante first showed up, and he's gum chewing, popping around, young, hey, 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 he's just like this annoying asshole.
Yeah. Honestly.
And I thought, man.
No, he's for a while, you're like, oh, he's going to ruin the movie.
Yeah, I'm like, he's going to ruin this fucking movie. He's bringing me down, man. And by God, there comes a point where I'm rooting for the guy.
Yeah. Well, it's also...
that was a trick to pull that off with me.
It's also interesting how much you like George C. Scott's character in this movie. At some point in the third act, he gives a sober assessment of how Musante handled himself. And he says it with appreciation. He says he did a good job back there. And all of a sudden, you completely feel differently about Tony Musante once you actually hear George C. Scott applaud him.
He makes it okay for us to like it. He takes the barrier down for us.
Yeah.
We're now,
we still don't really like him.
Not really.
Not really.
One thing about the movie is that it does not fall apart in the end. So many of these VHS tapes do.
Yeah.
And that makes it so satisfying.
Yeah.
So good. And also, I think it would be a great rewatch. I've only seen it once, but I think I would love to watch it again. With Hennessy.
Yeah, it would be a great double feature with Hennessy. And one last thing, in case anybody out there doesn't know it, is one of the things that really ran afoul of George C. Scott during the Houston time was that they wanted the European actress Tina Almont to play the girl. Scott insisted that she'd be an American. And then they found Trish Van Devere. He cast Trish Van Devere. And then they fell in love during the making of the movie. And then pretty much for the next 10 years, every other George C. Scott movie starred Trish Van Devere. I remember when we were... Well, me and his friends were watching the J. Lee Thompson movie Messenger of Death, all right, that stars Charles Bronson and Trish Van Devere. And I go, oh, well, Bronson apparently got tired of working with his wife, Jill Ireland, for 30 movies in a row, decided to do a movie with George C. Scott's wife.
Is it true that John Boorman was going to direct this at one time? And that George C. Scott and him also didn't get along?
I don't know. I'd heard that he was brought up at one point, all right, but I don't know what happened.
Because that's actually a really interesting choice. He would actually have been a very interesting director for this. I mean, with his kind of
I think so,
man in a landscape type.
No. I think along with Fletcher, he would have been terrific. I think Carter DeHaven had also like an association with Houston for a while, though.
Right.
If this conversation about The Last Run did not spur your interest, I don't know what's wrong with you. But you're in luck because this is available for streaming all over. Unfortunately, I don't have a VHS tape of it. If some collector out there has one and wants to give it up to me, call me. But until then,
if some collector in London,
I don't know, someone else might have a bootleg. A couple bootlegs of The Last Run lying around.
someone out there.
If another customer of Eddie Brandt's, when they replaced this one after I bought it. Well, I hadn't realized that when I bought it, I just bought it. I didn't realize, I didn't think that it was a bootleg. I didn't notice that it was a British cover. I hadn't thought about the fact that it hadn't been released in America.
You were just happy to have it.
It makes me appreciate my video cassette. And I'm a guy who actually even has a 16 print. It makes me appreciate my video copy.
The West. It was ugly.
I smell sheep.
All right, that'll be enough of that talk. Want to be a sidekick, you gotta learn the ropes.
And low down mean.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
But at least you knew where you stood.
Either you get your rifle and come with me, or I'll shoot your wife in the shoulder.
From the director of Police Academy, Tom Berenger in Rustlers Rhapsody, rated PG.
Starts tomorrow at a theater near you. Check newspapers.
Ready for a rootin' tootin' good time? Stop by the new Beverly Cinema to see Rustlers Rhapsody with co-hit The Last Run. These flicks play on eye-poppin' 35mm film for 2 nights. Yeah, you heard me right, 2 nights. On Tuesday, March 21st and Wednesday, March 22nd. 7165 Beverly Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90036. For even more information, visit thenewbev.com. The New Beverly Cinema. Always on film.
Okay, we're back, and the second movie on our show today is a comedy that I actually saw this when it came out in the 80s. I actually saw it on opening weekend I saw it at the Village during its opening weekend in Westwood Village. It's Hugh Wilson, who is the director of Police Academy, which I never really cared for. It's this follow-up movie, that kind of movie where you can do anything you want because you've had a big smash.
Yeah, you've just had the biggest hit in the world. What are you going to do now?
And so Paramount backed him with a Western comedy called Rustlers Rhapsody, starring Tom Berenger, amongst other people, but definitely starring Tom Berenger. This movie was talking above my head, and I still understood the basis of the comedy of the genre that's going on. But I had a basis. I'd even read books about the whole Gower Gulch, Sunset Corral, old school Western kind of story. So I knew from what they were parodying, but it's not like I'd watched a bunch of them. All right. So, but that's me with a little bit of knowledge. The majority of the audience that were anywhere my age or 20 years less than me, this movie was going over the heads of most of the audience, but they still thought it was funny. They didn't need to get the genre film comments going on. They just got the jokes. They
didn't even have to know. I mean, they knew the general idea that this is old movies, but they didn't have to know the specific old films.
They got the general comedy, but what I think is terrific about this comedy is it's not general. It is minutely specific.
It's razor sharp.
And apparently they worked from the assumption that nobody in the audience had to get it. They just understood it. They got it. So
it's working on deeper levels than its surface.
Exactly. So let me read the back of it. whistling tumbleweeds. The Wild West goes wacko when the greatest fast-drawing, fancy-dressing, silver-spurred, guitar-playing, singing cowboy movie matinee idol Rex O'Hurlahan, Tom Berenger, hits the saddle in Rustlers Rhapsody, a cockeyed, affectionate send-up of the 40s B-movie Western. Classic Western stereotypes and cliches get turned on their ear when our fearless hero, fully dressed in white and on top of his dancing horse Wildflower, rides into the tackiest town west of the Pecos to do good deeds and defy desperados. Written and directed by Hugh Wilson, who is responsible for the hilarious Police Academy. Rustlers Rhapsody also stars Andy Griffith and Mary Lou Henner.
I believe you just conjured Slim Pickens
Yeah, I did a little
to read the back of our box.
Tape number 3495, located in the comedy section, not the Western section, located in the comedy section under R. The idea of the movie is very generationally specific to the people who made this movie, because what the movie's ripely making fun of is the series of kiddie matinee westerns that came out in the late 30s and through the 40s and into the 50s. They all died out about mid-50s when the television came in. But the idea behind these kiddie matinee westerns is these are movies that were literally made for children. They'd feature a cowboy, and they would have very cliched adventures and very cliched set of characters. And sometimes they were hard fighting cowboys, and sometimes they were singing cowboys, and sometimes there was a combination of the two. But they dressed in fancy clothes, and they had these kind of unrealistic stories, and they always came out on top, and they always beat the villains, and all the characters surrounding them were kind of the same characters, the same kind of cliches you saw in one movie after another. And it was all wrapped up in an hour, because the movies were literally like about 54 minutes or 60 minutes long. Unless they were really big budget affairs where they might be shown as the second half of a nighttime feature, they were never shown at night. They were literally shown during the day, on the weekends. So for the kiddie matinee. So you would have the new Roy Rogers movie, or the new Johnny Mac Brown movie, or the new Ken Maynard movie, or Lash LaRue movie would show up for Saturday, Sunday at your theater. There would be about 20 minutes of cartoons, so probably about 3 or 4 cartoons.
Maybe a little news.
Yeah, and then you would see maybe a newsreel. You would definitely see the episode of whatever chapter, whatever a serial was playing. You'd see the next episode of that, and then the main feature was the cowboy movie. Again, that was about an hour long. And one of the things that these guys did is they also toured the country. So at some point, one of these, even if you lived in a small little Georgia town or a small little Louisiana town that, showed these movies, at some point, one of these cowboys would show up in your town. And they'd be there at the theater on that Saturday or Sunday, and maybe they'd have their horse, maybe they wouldn't, but they'd go and introduce the movie, and they'd sign autographs, and
all the kids would show up.
But the concept of the movie, where the movie's jumping off at, is it shows you like a rickety 16 millimeter tinny sound print of one of these
horses chasing, a guy on a horseback chasing another guy on a horseback.
It's all black and white. It has this tinny 16 millimeter one track sound going on, and you see
looks like it's shot on an old Mitchell.
Yeah. It's in black and white, and it's rickety, and then you're seeing it play the way if I were to string up a 16 millimeter print of one of these and we were to watch it, it looks like that. Okay, so they make it look even a little worse. All right, so the concept of the movie is to take the Roy Rogers character from a Gower Gulch B-movie kiddie western, and the cliches and the storyline and all that, and the fancy horse Wildfire, all that shit, take all the cliches, but stick it in a Sam Peckinpah movie. Give it Sam Peckinpah realistic violence. Give it slow motion violence.
Drop that into the smack dab into the middle of the 1980s.
Yeah, it has like the THX surround sound now with whizzing bullets happening that was not the case then, and is bloodier, and it just everything.
And since then, spaghetti westerns have come into existence, and so we have
and then
that element brought in eventually through Fernando Rey.
Mid-movie, Fernando Rey, all right, from spaghetti westerns themselves, comes in and they make a comment about spaghetti westerns. Yeah, I like the narrator. He goes, and sometime in the 60s, they started making these spaghetti westerns. I was always jealous of these fellas because they always had better background music than we did. And they always wore these really magnificent looking long dusters, even though it always seemed like it was 120 in the shade.
It is cool because when the Italians show up, they're all in these dusters. You can see the difference between the Italian view of the Old West and the classical view of the Old West and our kind of mid-'80s view of the Old West.
Yeah, now here's the thing. Where my admiration for the movie truly, truly lies is it was different in the early 70s when Mel Brooks started doing his style of parody, because he's just bringing up old cliches in old movies that you've seen before. And by bringing them up and making fun of it, our laughter is coming from the recognition of the cliche.
Yeah, most successfully done with Young Frankenstein.
Yes, exactly.
But also Silent Movie and High Anxiety.
Oh, I mean, Blazing Saddles and everything.
Saddles is
now, I think the reason Young Frankenstein kind of works better as a moving movie than the rest, because at the end of the day, he still is telling the Frankenstein story.
Yeah.
And the Frankenstein story is that compelling that even done in a comedy way, he still is committing to telling the story and you get involved in it.
He's also aping the look so well that it's really stunning. It's stunningly well matched to the original look of those films.
But I can't imagine that movie working as well as it is without Gene Wilder, because it is Gene Wilder's commitment to his performance that actually makes you take the movie vaguely seriously. Yeah. As time would go on, that wouldn't be enough for me. Just presenting cliches and presenting a familiar thing and laughing at my recognition, it was not funny enough for me. I think at a certain point, and I think from the time this movie came out to now, if you're going to engage in spoof, you need to deal in film criticism. You need to do gene splicing, subgenre criticism. It needs to be, and I don't mean you have to not like something when I say criticism. I mean, you need to engage in a critique of the genre, not just show me familiar tropes. And that's exactly what Rustlers Rhapsody does. It's giving a critique on that genre of Western, but Westerns in general, and how they don't work in the 80s.
Had Silverado come out before this film, or was it shortly after?
I think it came out. I think after.
Shortly after.
I'm guessing after. I'm making it sound like everything that's coming from it is funny is because of the writer Hugh Wilson's perspective. But one of the things that's really, really funny about the movie is it has almost a Last Action Hero kind of aspect.
Absolutely.
Where Rex O'Hurlihan, Tom Berenger's character, is kind of coming to a consciousness inside of this never-ending cycle of movies. He has now completely come to the grips that every town is the same. Yeah. That he is stuck on a never-ending conveyor belt of movies. And there is an inevitability to every single solitary aspect of this. He will go into a town. There will be the big bad boss man of the town. There will be the girl. There will be all the cliche characters. He's seen them all before. He will win every single fight. Everything will happen the way it's always happened before. And he's disillusioned by it. He's almost like George C. Scott, almost hoping to die to some degree or another. I'm overemphasizing that, but to some degree. He's
trapped in an endless cycle. He knows that the villains are going to come after him. He knows that he's going to have to...
It's almost a weird genre take on Groundhog Day, because he's living... Because Roy Rogers did live the same adventure
again,
week in,
again,
week out, week in, week out, and Rex O'Hurlihan is experiencing an awakening.
Well, and his awakening, as he's coming to this kind of self-actualization and self-realization and understanding of the world, he's kind of realizing how in being the same, it's a kind of lie. that's being broken open. It's kind of a shellacking on history that's been done by Hollywood.
But what's also really interesting is he's the only character that has any sense of awareness. All the supporting characters that are nothing but cliches are always played by different people in the different movies. So these cliche characters don't know they're cliched characters. In fact, one of the most charming parts is when he meets the town drunk. He's like, no, I've seen that big boss man before, and then they've got the corrupt sheriff, and then there's the saloon girl with the heart of gold, and
he's like, well, what about me?
And then the town drunk goes, no. Those are very individualistic people. No, they're not. They're in every town.
If you go to the next town, there's
every member. I'll prove it to you. Do you have a school marm that is very pretty but strangely asexual? Yeah. Is the blacksmith an old burly friendly guy that only gets mad when you burn down his barn? Yeah. And so none of these characters know what's going on. So throughout the whole film, as the storyline involved with the big bad boss man of the town, played not so very well by Andy Griffith. I think he's the weakest part of the movie. As the storyline progresses, see, Rex O'Hurlihan knows the storyline before it happens. Yeah. So all the other characters are always like flipping out about the next turn of events. He goes, no, that's okay. This happens every time. No, what the bad guy will do is he'll do this, and then I will do this, and then it'll all be fine. Okay, I have to say this because there's almost no point in talking about the movie unless I talk about this scene. But I think it might be the thing that makes you want to see the movie that all my buildup has been to. So in the third act of the movie, that is standard. All the henchmen of the big boss man have all stepped up against Rex O'Hurlihan, and they all got shot in the hand. And they all,
because he's a good guy. He's only going to shoot you in the hand.
He's only going to shoot you in the head. Well, you guys want to hang around? Well, it's been kind of a hard day, and kind of got to take care of our hands. That was really funny. Yeah. That guy's really funny. That henchman.
Yeah, the henchman guy.
So eventually, well, none of the henchmen work anymore. So they obviously have to hire like a big out-of-town torpedo, all right, to come in, who's a badass gunfighter, and he's going to come into town, and he's the hired guy. And then once Rex O'Hurlihan faces him, okay, that's it. Now the bad guy gets vanquished.
And that guy who they bring in happens to be Patrick Wayne.
Yes, John Wayne's son.
And he's amazing in this.
He's fantastic in it. And so, so they see the guy coming to town. And part of the thing about, Rex O'Hurlihan is because he dresses like Roy Rogers in his most glitzy days. So it's like these silk shirts and sequin shirts with like sparkles and
a red neck scarf, maybe.
Yeah, so fringe on the arm and whatever. And so like he's got so many fancy clothes that when Rex O'Hurlihan goes from town to town, he takes a wardrobe with him. So there's a mule dragging a wardrobe. So they see the professional gunfighter riding into town, and like, oh, there's the guy. There's the guy that the colonel hired. To going and that's the fellow. That's well, don't worry about it. Don't worry, it happens every movie. This is the last gasp of the villain. Once this doesn't work, then he's going to give up, and all you sheep people are going to be fine.
They've got all those like Mennonite sheep herder guys that are.
But then he notices the out of town bad guy, the professional that bring out in town, is pulling a wardrobe of his own, and so then he comes into town to face the guy, and he realizes he's a good guy. He's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so they've
thrown the plot.
Yeah, they've thrown the plot. They've literally flipped the script. And so they have this back and forth, and they're both talking like two good guys. All right. Patrick Wayne knows the outcome of the story just as much as Tom.
We're going to just shoot each other's hand indefinitely.
Yeah. So it's just as much as Tom Berenger does. And he goes, well, you can't do this. You're a good guy. I'm a good guy. It's not going to work. And then Patrick Wayne goes, well, then I guess the goodest guy wins. And then
at this moment, Berenger is having a crisis of confidence.
He's starting to have a crisis of confidence. And he goes, oh, wait, no, hold it. No, you're working for the bad guys. So I'm the better good guy. That's just it. That's just absolutely it. Because you're working for the bad guys, I'm obviously the gooder guy. So I don't see how it's impossible for you to win. Well, one, say I'm working for the bad guys. Well, that's kind of just your perspective.
Yeah, he logically talks him through it.
That
he works out his argument.
That could be very judgmental, all right, and Patrick Wayne starts listing the qualities that are important to being a confident good guy. And so it's like, I can't remember what they all are, but there's something like, you're nice to children and old ladies, you're good to animals, you always do this, you always do that, you're a confident heterosexual, and the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Let's fight and see who wins. Okay, here we go. And then Tom, wait a minute. You said confident heterosexual? Yes, confident heterosexual. I thought it would just had to be heterosexual. No. You need confidence behind that heterosexualism. Okay, here we go. Okay, hold it for a second. That is great film writing. That is genre, gene splicing, film criticism at its highest.
Yeah, absolutely.
We won't say how everything turns out, but I think this movie is a tremendous amount of fun. And I think actually one of the best things about the movie is I'm so happy they hired a dramatic action actor like Tom Berenger to play the character and not a comedy guy doing some Danny Kaye version of the fellow. I like the fact that Tom Berenger looks like he could be the star of one of these movies. And I think he's sensational in the film. So what does Franklin Browner have to say about Hugh Wilson's amusing confection?
He was prickly. But I think he likes it.
Mm-hmm.
Derided as the other Blazing Saddles, Rustlers Rhapsody is much more Groundhog Day or Truman Show. In his awakening to self-awareness, its singing cowboy, Rex O'Hurlehan, seems to be having realizations about the hidden nature of the American westward expansionism into the Old West. Indeed, it was Goebbels who said, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." Like a soldier who has seen the same outcome of one too many battles, the fact that the Hollywood machine has turned out so many serial singing cowboy movies of the exact same repeating story with the exact same repeating elements, our hero, and we, his culturally mesmerized audience, find ourselves questioning the repeating media messages we were all fed as children, be it cowboy movies, superhero movies, sitcoms, soap operas, cartoons, or any other programming. Repetition leads to familiarity, and familiarity is comforting in troubling times, but it is a false shield. The suggestive gender subtext of the film, and that our hero meets his match in a mirror hero of neutral virtue, self-described as a lawyer, are statements the film makes that this reviewer is unequipped to parse.
Okay, and we're back, and we're joined by Gala Avery.
Yeehaw! Hey guys. Okay, so as Quentin mentioned earlier, this movie is kind of like a parody, a love letter to the kiddie matinee cowboy movies. Apparently, it's an ode specifically to the Hopalong Cassidy films.
A simpler time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the Hopalong Cassidy character, for those of you that don't know, because I didn't know this, as a American Western lover, the Hopalong Cassidy character was created in 1904 by Clarence E. Mulford, and the books were made into a series of movies in which actor William Boyd portrayed him 66 times.
Yeah,
wow.
I'm familiar with these movies. I would not call him Hopalong Cassidy, all right? Because he's obviously Gene Autry. Is who he obviously is, all right? Because he has the costume of Roy Rogers, at Roy Rogers' highest. He's a singing cowboy. Hopalong Cassidy wasn't a singing cowboy.
And and he also doesn't have the costume, because when I was reading this specifically, that it was like the Hopalong Cassidy.
It's not,
Hopalong Cassidy specifically wore a black hat.
Yeah, of course he did.
Yeah, which went against that stereotype that only villains wore black.
Yes, and he would never wear a black hat. But not only that, though, even when the town drunk character, who's very funny in the movie, G.W. Bailey.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, when he becomes the sidekick, all right?
Yes.
He's got to put on his sidekick outfit.
I love that.
Yeah, he's like, I either got to put my drunk outfit on or I've got my sidekick outfit. He puts the sidekick, what are you wearing? Well, it's my sidekick outfit. All right. Well, okay, the sidekick outfit he's wearing is exactly what Smiley Burnett, who was Gene Autry's sidekick, always wore. I mean, it's an exact replica.
Like with that shirt, that checkered shirt.
Yeah. It's an exact replica of Smiley Burnett's outfit, who was the most popular of all the sidekicks at that time.
Speaking of outfits, I love that moment where he's telling him, his sidekick, like, go get my shirt.
Yeah.
But like specifically that blue one, not the checkered one, not this one. I don't want the teal one. I need this shirt. Yeah. It was really funny. And I like watching this because you're right. The Westerns in this kind of way don't really fit into the 80s. Mm-hmm. It's like a Westworld quality where all of a sudden you've been playing the same scenario over and over and you're kind of sick of the game because all of the robots are the same and they act the same. But I like it when he's talking to his future sidekick, or he's talking to the town drunk, and he goes through the characters, as Quentin said, and he says, like, oh, the blacksmith, and oh, the school teacher. And then G.W. Bailey says, well, did they have a town drunk? And he goes, no, you're unique.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders, though, is he unique in this situation? Because
or is he just telling him?
Or is he just telling him? But because he does become his sidekick, and he's never had a sidekick before. And so part of me wondered, like, was he actually a unique character to him, or is he just telling him that?
I took it, and I thought it was how it was meant to be taken. Yeah. It could be that way. I took it as like, oh no, that was just him being a nice guy. Yeah. All right. I've just told you there is no Santa Claus. All right. But I'm going to now. But I'm going to soften the blow. All right. I'm going to soften the blow.
His name is Kris Kringle.
Yeah. Having said that, I do believe that he probably didn't have sidekicks in all the other ones. All right. So so there is a little gene splicing ambiguity even when it comes to that as well.
There is one gag reference that is a kind of a running joke, which is him eating turnips.
Oh, and
or some kind of root vegetable
what was
of some
up
kind.
With that?
And
it's a metaphor for drugs, obviously. Okay. All right, part of the thing. It's if you ever watched How I Met Your Mother. They couldn't have them smoke pot on the show, but they would have them eat these submarine sandwiches. But they would talk about the submarine sandwiches as if they were smoking pot. Okay. Well, they kind of do the same thing in Rustlers Rhapsody. Is like you dig up this root, all right, like a tree root or ginseng or some sort of root that's buried in the ground, and you eat it, and it's all psilocybin-y and gets you all fucked up. But he's so he can't drink. He can't do anything. He orders milk in these places, so he can't drink or anything. But he gets stoned eating the roots, and he turns the other characters onto the root. But okay, one of the great cliches is when all the characters, all the subsidiary characters, just start showing up at his campsite.
All the women.
Yeah. Well, even his sidekick is there, and he gets mad. He goes, "Look, this is my campsite. I'm the one that took all the little rocks and put them in a little circle."
Hey, Dad, did you catch that the character Blackie is played by Jim Carter? You'll know him as Mr. Carson in Downton Abbey.
Oh.
Yes. And also he's the chef in
I love Downton Abbey.
Yeah, you love. That's why I brought it up. He's also the chef in Nicholas Rogue's The Witches, which I love.
Well, by the way, other than the fact you could tell that Blackie was British, I loved Blackie.
No, his character was I was so sad when he died.
Yeah, well, apparently so was everybody else. Everybody else had this deep-seated love for Blackie.
I love when like the daughter is like crying over Blackie, and then her dad's like, "You knew him? Knew him? I'm the only one that knew him. He spoke deep to me."
Yeah, I like how it slowly becomes revealed that Blackie is this really sensitive Lothario.
Yes, this very deep guy. That the tough guy stuff was just he's not only was a shield of his true feelings.
You even start wondering, like, not only was he sleeping with the daughter or romancing the daughter at very least. But he may have also been sleeping with Andy Griffith, her father. He might have been, because he kind of laments over him also. I knew him in ways that nobody else knew.
Yes, he knew how to love. He knew how to feel. He knew how to touch. And also, the whole movie works. All right. I was curious to see if I thought it would fall apart in the second act, and it does not fall apart. Having said that, though, that first 20 minutes is so terrific. Leading up to the end of Blackie. All right. That whole opening 15, 20 minutes is just so fucking solid. It's so good. And it doesn't lose any of its charm during the rest of it. But then it starts gathering up the way the first part did once Patrick Wayne comes into it. Because it has it's a killer third act.
Patrick Wayne comes in just when you need him. And he's refreshing in a really cool way. Mm-hmm. I loved the movie. I was totally with this film. I love the mashup. I love all of the conundrums that he's having. I like his kind of self-awareness that he's undergoing, that he's having this realization about the whole world and what is reality.
He's not aware that he's a cinema character. He does not know what movies is. Yes. Cinema has not been invented as far as he's concerned. It's just the same scenarios that he's forced to act out, but he doesn't.
He's a little confused by the whole situation as well.
But he's not, he's not like a Chuck Jones cartoon character who knows he's a cartoon character and all of a sudden starts talking to the animators. He's not that aware. He's just aware enough to know that he's stuck in this loop of perpetuality.
There are several really great one-liners, specifically in like that opening 20 minutes. Yeah. Like when Blackie and like they roll into the saloon and there's that guy and he goes, "You can kill me if you want, but this is the exact thing that drives down real estate prices." And they go pow, 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 and he just kills him. And then the sidekick goes, or the town drunk at the time goes, "That was the town doctor." And he goes, "You're kidding." He's like, "Yep, I am. Just some real estate guy."
Just some real estate guy.
I thought that was really funny.
When they're standing, they're having their showdown together, him and Blackie, which really also works in an action-y way. Yeah. Because they're back and forth.
No, that's a great showdown that they have. That whole bar sequence is fantastic.
And when he says, like, he goes, "Okay, Blackie, you don't do it. I'm going to take out my gun and I'm going to shoot you in the hand." "You're going to shoot me in the hand?" "Yes, I'm going to shoot you in the hand." "Why the hand?" "Because I'm a good guy. That's where you shoot. Not the head, not the heart, not the face. Just the hand." "Yeah, just the hand." "I don't think I much like the idea of being shot in the hand."
That guy's great. Just hearing you redo him it is reminding me of how fantastic he was and how sad I was when he was taken from the movie.
Jim Carson.
Yeah.
Carter.
The movie takes a tiny little dip.
I'm telling you, when that back and forth between Rex and Blackie started happening at the Village, like the whole theater was electric. Yeah. Like, wow, this is we weren't expecting a good Western scene in this movie. So I have a rare positive review of Rustlers Rhapsody because, like most audiences, most critics didn't really get it or understand it. But one of the good reviews that it did get was from Michael Ventura, who was the head critic at the LA Weekly. And he was one of my favorite critics at that time. He was very leftist, hippie.
Yeah, that was a very reliable publication.
Yeah, it was very.
I always knew that I was kind of in line for the most part with the LA Weekly.
Thing about Michael Ventura though is, as opposed to all the other guys that worked there, like FX Feeney and whatever, who had to just review one thing after another. Michael Ventura usually picked the picks of the week, and he pretty much only wrote about what he decided he wanted to write about, and so it was almost always positive, unless he particularly hated something. So this is a positive one. And he wrote a very interesting review. All right. So this is for his pick of the week for Rustlers Rhapsody. "Viewer, be warned. Reactions to Rustlers Rhapsody's spoof Western tend to be extreme. Some people, like me, think that it's the funniest studio picture so far this year. And some people, like my wife, find it genuinely weird that anybody, especially me, should think such a flat, slow misfire has a laugh in it. Curious, though not scholarly research, a phone survey of friends, shows reactions split right down the middle and by sexes. Men, especially men pushing 40, tend to find it hilarious. Women and children tend to find it at best amusing. My theory is that women and children were not raised in the shadow of John Wayne and the other charismatic cowboys who taught us that the only way to be a man was to be a good guy, and the only way to be a good guy was to ride into town alone, seek out injustice, shoot the bejesus out of everybody in a black hat, and ride out alone, preferably into a sunset. A fantasy that, on a deeper level than we'd like to admit, we took seriously. So when Hugh Wilson's Rustlers Rhapsody comes along and makes fun of this paradigm, our laughter is the laughter of people who have needed to laugh at this stuff for a long time. We intellectualized it away. We felt superior to it. We've transcended it and liberated ourselves from it. And that's all well and good. But this is the first time some of us has had a chance to truly laugh at it, and with it, in praise of it and pity of it, but laugh. Tom Berenger's Virgin Hero and his supporting cast do a masterful deadpan job. Jose Luis Arcane's photography would have pleased John Ford. And Hugh Wilson, whose Police Academy I found unwatchable, directs his own script with what used to be called aplomb. Compared to the high satiric style of Rustlers Rhapsody, Blazing Saddles looks like kids playing in a sandbox.
Well, that is a really insightful review, actually.
Yeah.
That's
You did a good job with that.
Yeah, he got the movie.
He got it. He did what a good critic is supposed to do. He understood the film and then was able to explain it back.
Yeah.
I mean, what I think the closest equivalent since this movie, and this is not as me tooting my own horn, it's definitely a case of us doing a jump off of something that nobody had understanding of what we were doing, is it's very similar to Grindhouse.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, me and Robert, did this thing, and it was a good tribute to 70s Grindhouse movies. And then the majority of the audience that went and saw it opening weekend, what the fuck is this shit?
Why is it so scratched up?
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't even know that there was another movie playing. I mean, it was like we took them into a world that they didn't have enough knowledge.
Yeah, I saw.
This is actually more successful than that because, I don't think ours ours doesn't have to work as a complete parody like theirs does.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the movie works absolutely well as an audience-driven, big studio Paramount comedy. Mm-hmm. It's funny. It's funny on it for general audiences. It's hilarious.
Absolutely.
But it's also for film nerds.
Yeah, it absolutely.
I mean, it's great that Paramount, who made all of those Westerns, it seems, are the ones that made this movie.
So I watched mine on iTunes. It was a beautiful transfer that I rented, but I was able to pick up a VHS of this. It is a Paramount Home Video. It's the same one that was at Video Archives Tape. I picked mine up off of eBay for $3.79.
Wow, that's a good price there.
Quentin, what tape number is that from Video Archives?
3495.
3495. What a good number.
Yes, and actually there's a little dash which suggests that we had multiple copies at one point.
I just want to say that when we viewed this movie, Tim Cook didn't get anything.
Yeah.
When you watched it, he got like 30%.
Ours was the better screen.
I can guarantee that.
And we're back.
Yes, we are.
And we're back with a movie that I'm super excited to talk about.
Me too.
Because this one has never been on my radar. I'd never heard of it.
I know we've shown some obscure movies on this show. I dare say that this is one of the most, if not the most, obscure. I came across a review for it in Psychotronic magazine. Because, Michael Weldon reviews everything. And in the Psychotronic review, he goes, well, this is a crazy little number. It's basically, more or less, it's a Star Wars spoof starring a guy who's doing a Jack Benny impersonation. So it's a weird sci-fi spoof mixed up with Jack Benny
of all things.
Of all things, Jack Benny mythology. So basically, the character of Jet Benny basically playing the Han Solo character. And even the princess has Princess Miranda, she's a little bit like Mary Livingston, his wife from the show. He's got a black android called Rochester, and his spaceship is called the Maxwell, which is a joke on like the terrible shitty car that Jack Benny would always drive everywhere. That sounds insane. That sounds absolutely preposterous. So I thought, well, that sounds weird. And then I never really thought about the movie again. And then it just so happens that 2 weeks ago, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I was doing an event at the Hollywood Theater. It's a great theater in Portland. And I was told about that they have a video store there that's a massive, massive, huge video store called Movie Madness. And so hey, you got to go down and visit Movie Madness. So I go down and I visit Movie Madness, and they have tons of things. And so I'm looking through the video store, and I don't know why this popped into my head.
Like a beacon, it called to you.
I just don't know why it popped into my head. But for whatever stupid reason, as I'm going through stuff, all of a sudden, the Jet Benny show popped in my head. Well, let me see if they have that. Then I went into the cult section, and I looked under J, and there was the Jet Benny show. I go to the counter, and I go, can I buy this? And they go, well, no, you can't buy it. I mean, we don't, our collection is our collection. We're really precious about our collection. Look, I'll rent it to you, and you can send it back in a year from now. We don't care, but we can't sell you the tape. Oh, we can rent it to you, and you just get it back to us as soon as you can. So I go, okay. And so I got it, and I brought it home, and I told you guys about it. Everyone was intrigued by its bizarreness. And we sat down to watch it. I was as charmed by this movie as any movie we've watched since we did the show. I'm not saying it's the best movie that we've watched since we've done the show, but I was so incredibly charmed by every aspect of it, by every crew member who worked on it. And it was the movie that 5 days after we did it, I thought about this movie every day for those 5 days. Not about like great scenes from it, but just that it existed. And just the fact that this exists and that it was so lovingly done. And the lead guy, Steve Norman, who plays Jet Benny, has been in my, I do him now. Yeah. I don't do Jack Benny. I don't do Jack Benny. I do Steve Norman doing Jack Benny. One of the things we didn't know, but I think we figured out while we're watching the movie, we're pretty positive this is made on Super 8.
It sure feels like Super 8 to me. In fact,
and it looks like it's made out of Texas. That's the only thing we could figure out from the film is it looked like it's made out of Texas.
Yeah, at first I was thinking, is this California? And then suddenly it became apparent this is Texas.
Yeah, and it's and it's pretty obvious that it's made on Super 8. And if it's made, this is absolutely the best Super 8 feature I've ever seen.
Absolutely. And there was a time when Super 8 features would...
I've seen some okay Super 8 features. None of them as good as this.
Yeah. First of all, the box looks like Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's like a spoof of Star Wars. You've got the Jet Benny character with something like a lightsaber. Polly McIntyre as Princess Miranda is there at his side, like Princess Leia. They've got their Jet Benny show logo that looks like the Star Wars logo. You've thrilled to the adventures of Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon. Now prepare yourself for Jet Benny, a super spoof of the not-too-distant future. Winner of the Lawrence Kasdan Award, 1986 Ann Arbor Film Festival.
You sound like Eli Roth's voice when he does this Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that was sort of a Thanksgiving. Eli can call me if he ever needs me again.
White meat, dark meat, all will be carved.
That was good.
That was really good.
It's a United Home video box. In the distant future, stand the remains of a civilization on the brink of destruction. The city of Altamira. The power-hungry Lord Zane wants to complete his world empire with the addition of this ancient, noble citadel. His plan? Kidnap the heirs to the throne of Altamira and take control.
Princess Miranda and Prince Carmen.
The only thing that could possibly prevent the city's D-Day climactic future is a man from its grade B cinematic past. With the help of his faithful co-pilot, Rochester, Jet Benny leaps into a parsimonious action to do battle with Zane and his cronies.
But did you write the back of this box? That's the kind of adjective you just gotta slip into shit.
What, you don't know what parsimonious means? The spirit of the 40s meets the pseudo-technology of the 80s. Never have so few done so much for so many, for so little.
That is the funniest joke I've ever heard on the back of a video box in my life. And your reading of it was terrific because you didn't know it was the joke until you got to the end of it.
I played it straight.
You figured it out.
I figured it out.
Landed the ending.
If Jack Benny were alive, he would have wanted it this way. 77 minutes, color, 1988, comedy adventure.
Here's the thing is, I'm not ridiculously crazy knowledgeable about the Jack Benny TV show. I know that it exists, but it kind of stopped being in rotation, I
used to watch it when I was very young.
Yeah. I mean, I'd seen it a few times, in the early 70s when I was a little boy on reruns. But what would happen is, but it was pretty much out of rotation, I guess, by the time I was 10. But what would happen is KTLA Channel 5 out here in Los Angeles would have a Jack Benny week every year or every other year. So for that whole week, instead of having the Channel 5 movie theater, they would just show like 4 episodes of the Jack Benny show. So it would take it over for a week. And I watched some of those weeks, because I thought it was a pretty funny show. But I mean, I don't think I'd seen it since I was a little boy on one of those Channel 5.
Yeah, and then I come over to your house and you're like, hey, let's watch a Jack Benny episode. I'm like, what?
Yeah. So the thing is, I thought, well, I have a bunch of them because Eddie Brands had a bunch of them. So I decided to watch a couple. And so I'm watching, wow, these are really funny. And I found myself...
It's like a modern Gary Shandling or Larry David.
Well, it's definitely that. But I found myself laughing out loud in a way that I enjoy watching older sitcoms, but I'm more like thinking, hey, that's funny, rather than me laughing out loud. I was actually laughing out loud, and that not even at the most obvious jokes. And so
it's a whole world. It's the world he creates.
So then you come over and he's got all these characters and he's got all these like little trademarks. And so we watch a couple of episodes of the Jack Benny show before we start watching the Jet Benny movie. Since then, I've watched like 20 episodes of Jack Benny. And every time Roger comes over, I make him watch at least 2 more. All right. So we decided, okay, look, we're not going to really try to look up these guys. We don't, the director's name is Roger D. Evans. Okay, we're not going to look up exactly what they did afterwards or what Steve Norman did afterwards, if he did anything afterwards. We didn't kind of want to know. We just wanted to, we're going to leave that up to you. If you guys want to do any kind of research, go ahead. We just wanted to just have it exist in this time. Now, with us not knowing anything and not doing any research, the only thing, so we have cinema speculation on our hands. So we can only speculate what the situation is. So we're speculating that it was shot in Texas.
Yes.
Now, when it comes to the origin of this, my guess is this. If I had to guess, I am guessing that somewhere in Texas, there was some sort of coffee house or comedy club that existed. And this guy, Steve Norman, would come in and do a Jack Benny takeoff.
He would do a whole Jack Benny review.
Yeah, he would do a whole Jack Benny takeoff done exactly like the Jack Benny show, which, by the way, the Jack Benny show, Jack Benny would come out and there'd be a curtain behind him and he'd talk to his audience. And then, he would either set up a story that you would see play out or they would do a sketch. But he was always start off talking to his audience and maybe he'd bring out the guest who was going to be the guest star on the show. And here's Peter Lorre. Come up here, Peter. And then they would talk to the audience and then they would start their sketch. Well, the Jet Benny show starts exactly like that. It starts like black and white kinescope, and Jet Benny comes out there.
And pretty good kinescope. I thought it was actually Jack Benny when it first started.
It was a little boggling at first because it was so much like the show we had watched. The opening was so exactly correct. It was almost disconcerting.
Well, Polly McIntyre, who plays Princess Miranda, when she comes out as
some 50s actress, Polly,
and the way she kind of comes out and does her little greeting to the audience, to the TV audience at home, and then kind of runs off camera to get ready for the skit.
Yeah,
she was so selling the time period. I couldn't understand it when you explained to me afterwards. No, that's the guy that's Jet Benny.
Yeah.
That's not Jack Benny. This is actually not old footage.
No. So understand.
Which for a little movie, again, that's a great thing to pull off.
The bizarre premise of this show is not only does it not take place in the time of Star Wars, it doesn't even take place in the 80s. It takes place in 1959. The Jet Benny Show is being recorded in 1959. This is just their version of science fiction. Now, when you watch the Jack Benny Show, you realize that many episodes are Jack coming out there and talking to the audience. Oh, we're going to do a private detective a sketch today. Oh, we're going to do a Western sketch today. Oh, we're going to do a gangster sketch today. And then all of a sudden the play opens and then they do a gangster sketch, or they do a Desperate Hours takeoff or something. Well, this is just their version of that. It's just we're doing a science fiction takeoff. What I suspect happened is some either a little comedy theater in Texas or some little coffee house in Texas. This guy, Steve Norman, this Jack Benny impersonator, started doing his own live version of a Jack Benny show, probably every Friday or every Sunday or every Wednesday. Not too dissimilar from the Soloway sisters when they used to do the real live Brady Bunch, where they would go on stage and just take scripts from the Brady Bunch and act them out on stage. I'm guessing that this was probably their most successful sketch.
They might have done mashups and stuff.
Yeah. They might have done a funny Star Wars sketch with Jack Benny, and then they'd been doing it for a while, and then they decide, hey, let's try to raise up the money to make a movie. One of the things that if you know who Jack Benny is and you understand the lineage behind him and like the different tropes and stuff that he's known for, the movie starts, once it gets into its science fiction story, it starts so strongly because when it cuts to the Maxwell, the spaceship, you see Jack Benny there alone playing his violin, which is an important part of the Jack Benny persona. The important part of the Jack Benny persona was that he loved to play his violin, but he didn't play it very well. And you see the guy just... the Maxwell is a gigantic, like Nostromos kind of ship, but there's only two people on it. There's Jet Benny and then there's Rochester, who's usually at the controls driving it. And so he's on this gigantic Nostromos-like Maxwell, and he's just walking down the hall, playing his violin. It's the first time we see him from behind. And it's just, if you know anything about Jack Benny, it captures the persona perfectly, but there's also this kind of melancholy resonance about a guy playing a violin badly, and not done for comic purposes.
No, they play it straight.
Yeah, they play it very straight. It's
loving. It's a loving tribute in that moment.
It lets you know right away you're in good hands because it just starts the film off about Jack Benny in just the right tone. The actor we're talking about, his name is Steve Norman. He's the one who plays Jet Benny, and he's doing a Jack Benny impersonation throughout the whole movie. He's fucking sensational.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is terrific. What he does that's really special is, I figure if he's a Jack Benny impersonator, it's probably going to be good impersonating Jack Benny, and he's excellent impersonating Jack Benny. I mean, to such a degree that at a certain point, I forgot that I'm not watching.
It could have been Jack Benny.
I forget I'm watching Steve Norman. I start thinking I'm watching Jack Benny. But what's really special is, a strange way, in that same vein that we're talking about Young Frankenstein, he's not just a disposable joke. I liked his character of Jet Benny. And not only is he very funny doing Jack Benny, it almost stops being super funny because he just makes it natural.
To Jet Benny, he's playing it straight.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He's absolutely playing it straight.
He's being true to the Benny character.
But what's weird is he's a good enough actor that he's actually able to carry the dramatic storytelling part of the movie. You actually care about what happens.
Yeah.
And, it's one thing to be funny. It's one thing to be odd. It's another thing to take the narrative and put it on your shoulders and drive that narrative all the way home to the end of a 90-minute movie. And he does that. Steve Norman does that. He does it wonderfully.
He carries the movie.
He tells the story. He's a narrative actor. He's not just lurching from funny bit to funny bit.
Today you were doing like a Jack Benny impersonation.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of realized as you were doing it, it's not that there's any individual funny joke.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the road he takes to telling you anything.
Yeah, it's
the circuitous path that he goes on.
His verbiage creates a humorous kind of thing.
By constantly throwing in, you see.
Yeah.
Like,
by throwing in all this little extra stuff as he's describing things. The little extra stuff isn't funny, but it creates the rhythm that it becomes funny. The other actors in the piece are really, really strong. It actually has, of all the Super 8 movies I've ever seen, it has the strongest cast.
Well, it's almost like a troupe.
Yeah, because I mean, the bad guy is a legit good actor. He's able to pull off his bad guy lines really good. The girl who's playing the Princess Leia character, like
Polly McIntyre,
yeah, like Mary Livingston, is very, because it's be hard to actually impersonate Mary Livingston, and she doesn't impersonate her, but she suggests her in a strange way.
Yeah, Ted Leutemann as Commander Shades.
Yeah. Commander Shades is fantastic. But what I've been waiting for you to talk about, Roger, is I want you to take the ball and run with it. Is just talk about how the true cleverness in the special effects that they use.
Well, it's beyond cleverness. It's beyond cleverness. This guy, Roger Evans, brings a kind of handmade quality, a loving handmade quality in the way that our pal Dan O'Bannon brings to Dark Star. And I think you even mentioned at one point, God, this is like Dark Star in that it's this little tiny, unlikely movie that's hand put together, just with what they have available around them, the locations they have and the equipment they have and the actors that they have.
It definitely sits on a shelf located next to things like Dark Star, Evil Dead.
I can see Roger Evans in his dorm room probably doing these optical effects, which are absolutely like Gilliam-esque, wonderful 70s style imagery. Well, it's 80s style.
Yeah.
And and crafting that stuff just the same way that Dan O'Bannon did.
Okay, now, is it as good a movie at the end of the day as Dark Star?
No.
Is it as good a movie at the end of the day as Evil Dead? No. All right, but children shouldn't play with dead things.
Yeah.
It's as good as that, and that's a good movie.
Yeah.
That's a good movie.
And that's another handmade film.
Another handmade film. So it's in that category. Actually, when it comes to other Super 8 classics, the movie that I think it's as good as, and it's a good movie and a terrific, the best Super 8 movie until I saw this of all time, is Todd Haynes' Superstar,
the Karen Carpenter
story.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to that, because in both cases, you think you're going to watch that movie. The first time you put it on, you thought you were going to watch it for 15 minutes. And until the gimmick run out.
And you think it's just going to be a gimmick. And then you realize, no, he actually, that's what he had to make the movie with.
And in both cases, the gimmick lives beyond the movie. And you're actually, again, it's probably part of the reason you like the movie so much. It's like, oh, you weren't quite expecting it to hold together that way.
What I really compare this to, and it's because when I was young in the 1970s and early 1980s, I would go to sci-fi conventions. I can't remember. WonderCon, I think, is what it was back when, or it was something like that. There was this convention that would come through town, and it would be at the airport, the LA airport, one of those hotels there. They would take over a couple of ballrooms.
The International Hotel or something.
Everybody would come in sort of their 1970s version of cosplay back then. And you dress up as like science fiction characters and stuff like that. And invariably there would be different programs. There would be, the floor that you go to get things signed and to buy stuff. And then there would be a program where, they've got Rob Bottin coming in, and he's going to, maybe not Rob Bottin.
Herbert Jefferson Jr., the black guy from Battlestar Galactica, is there signing autographs.
Exactly. And so
not Dirk Benedict, Herbert Jefferson Jr.
Yeah, exactly. You'd get a couple of those and people talking, on stage. And then invariably at every one of these, they would show a movie called Hardware Wars.
Oh, yeah.
Hardware Wars was made by a young filmmaker named Ernie Faselis, who began taking the title Ernie Ford Faselis, and he did a little logo just like Francis Ford Coppola.
For Pork Lips Now, yeah.
Yeah, and so he would make these movies on Super 8, which were spoofs, parodies, and his big one was Hardware Wars, which was like this little Super 8.
It's hysterical.
Hysterical short, basically, just put together like Jet Benny.
Literally one of my favorite lines in any spoof ever is like, but the planet basketball is a peaceful planet.
like their Darth Vader is just.
The Planet Basketball is a peaceful planet.
And then after that, he did Pork Lips Now, which was his Apocalypse Now version.
Starring Billy Gray from Bud from Father Knows Best.
And so Ernie Ford Faselis became like a kind of... He was like Super 8 Filmmaker magazine. Would have spreads on him. It became his little empire.
To Roger and Scott, who are, the impresarios of Super 8 filmmaking of the South Bay, I mean, he might as well be Ernie Ford Faselis.
He was. He earned the title. So Jet Benny has that same kind of quality, except it's a feature.
And it holds up.
And so as I was watching it, I was like, okay, I'm detecting that a lot of this is post-sync sound.
Yeah. It's all post-sync sound.
Yeah, that they've dubbed it. And so I'm thinking this is Super 8 because it does have a rough quality to it. I mean, it could be, this easily could have been 16, but as I'm watching it, I'm a pretty good detective when it comes to stuff like this.
I'm positive.
And the fact that it wasn't sync was a real kind of giveaway because that's like a problem.
And the
when
fact
you're shooting on Super 8.
And the fact that Steve Norman is able to post sync his entire performance and be as funny as he is.
And props to Roger Evans, who makes the most of what he has. And just when I think that the movie doesn't have any visual pizzazz, suddenly those crazy animations of that guy flying around on that little jet car thing or whatever it is that he's got.
Yeah.
Like, that's as good as anything I've seen in any low budget movie. I love it.
That moment was so Roger. All right.
I mean, it's got this graphic 70s graphism quality to it. Suffice it to say, this is a magnificent movie, a magnificent low-budget production that, if you're going to watch it, you should probably check out a few episodes of Jack Benny.
Yeah, watch a couple of episodes of Jack Benny.
Even if you're not going to watch it, you should actually watch a few episodes of Jack Benny. Yeah,
exactly. If Jack Benny's just a name to you, then you should definitely watch about 2 or 3 episodes of his TV show. They're only a half hour, 20 minutes, 22 minutes or something. Watch about 3 of them before you watch the Jet Benny show. We have completely oversold the Jet Benny show. I'm totally fine with that because it's just it's a byproduct of our affection for it, because it's just rare for me to have this much affection for something just to come whamming me out of the fucking blue like this does.
Well, it's not like anybody's currently championing this movie.
Yeah. Well, that's for sure.
So I think it's okay to oversell it because it's been undersold up till now. So Gala, it's pretty rare for you to watch a movie with us. How was that?
Actually, it's not that rare to watch a movie with you guys, since after recording every time, we go downstairs and we watch a VHS, but it is rare for us to talk about it on the show. So I was really excited because we watched this on VHS together, and Quentin so graciously played me a few episodes of the Jack Benny show before, because I had never even heard of him, to be honest. I don't watch that kind of TV. That's not really like my wheelhouse. And it's really funny. It's like Larry David. Like, honestly, like, if
it's
you
like Curb Your Enthusiasm in the 50s.
If you like Curb Your Enthusiasm and you're wanting more, like, just go watch the Jack Benny show.
And he's just as much of an asshole, all right, in social circumstances.
He's just as cheap.
Yeah, he's just as cheap and just as problematic in his own navigation of social order.
And he lives in a kind of Hollywood reality where all the stars are living in his neighborhood. And so they're walking in and out.
But like the guys said, no research on this. They talked a little bit about the United Home Video, and you guys know it was Dark Star. That was our other United Home Video, which...
Well, that actually makes a lot of sense.
If it had been a snake, it would have bitten us.
Exactly. I love on this box that who is it behind them? None other than Commander Shades.
Yeah.
He's the Darth Vader.
He's the Darth Vader,
It's not, what's his name? It's not Lord Zane. It is Commander Shades as the Darth Vader. The only downfall of the movie for me is Prince Carmen. Richard Sable playing Prince Carmen.
I didn't care for a Super 8 movie. He's not too terrible, but
when everyone else is so good,
he's the least. But for most Super 8 features, he's not bad.
Can we talk for a moment on like how incredibly violent Rochester?
We had to set up who Rochester is though in the show for those of you who haven't seen it, and then who he is in the movie.
Okay. literally almost like the closest thing that Jack Benny had to a true partner was Eddie Rochester Anderson. Rochester was basically his valet. And Jack Benny was a terrible boss. He was completely cheap. Rochester usually gets the zinger, all right, and most of their exchanges together, and one of his Jack Benny had many famous things that he would say that were catchphrases, but if I'm just going to do Jack Benny out of the blue, I'm just going, "Oh, Rochester," and then Rochester comes out there.
And by the way, when Quentin just did that, he's doing Jet Benny's voice. I hear Jet Benny when I close my eyes.
I would actually say the least successful thing that they do in this movie is their handling of Rochester. So in it, Rochester is he's kind of the Chewbacca character.
Yeah.
Or
the C-3PO, sort of a
combined between the two of them.
And here he is on the box, by the way, peeking up at the very bottom.
Yeah, he's an android. He's an android that flies the Maxwell, all right, with Jet Benny, and he does all of his stuff. He's a crazy looking, looks like a weird space age teddy bear, all right, the way he's designed. And then they give him a cliched Mr. Bones, kind of voice. They could have done more. It could have been cleverer. Also, it's a little strange that they're so right on about everything about the Jack Benny show. And they do a generic Mr. Bones black dialect from the 40s, where actually Rochester didn't have that dialect. He had a very specific dialect. Yes, Mr. Benny. He had a very particular sound. It's strange that they didn't try to impersonate the real Rochester rather than a generic voice. They don't do enough with him. But the thing that they do
yeah, here it comes.
That is kind of amazing. Is at some point, so you just figure he's just the android manservant, but then at some point the bad guys get Rochester, and it turns out it's fairly very easy to turn Rochester into the world's killer robot of all time. And so he's just this executioning killing machine. And so the bad guy is using Rochester to wipe out the rebels. And so the rebels think of Rochester as if, he's the angel of death, And
it's been for the past, how his money is it, 7 years or something since he's crashed on the planet?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he doesn't know that 7 years, we don't feel 7 years has passed, but it did pass for Jet Benny. And then you realize for 7 years, Rochester has been
slowly becoming this.
Like the evil Iron Giant, all right? Through the whole thing. And they have something at the end where they get to a cave. And they're like, what are all these dead bodies? Because it's nothing with dead bodies all around. Oh, Rochester came in here and killed all these people. So it's just I don't think that I don't like how they pulled off Rochester at the end, because I think they could have done a better job. But the idea that Rochester is the death merchant machine android of all time is kind of funny.
Roger, you talked a little bit about the effects in this movie, but as Quentin says, the bad guys take a hold of Rochester and they've rewired him. And so he's taken hold of Princess Miranda and captured her with Lord Zane. And then Rochester is well, Jet Benny first hears her and comes to her rescue with this cape.
Yeah.
He's wearing this crazy black cape the entire time.
It's amazing that he's able to do such a dexterous performance with this incredibly cumbersome long cape hanging off of his back the entire length of the movie.
Yeah.
So he comes down and he sees Rochester is attacking Princess Miranda, and he's like, you have to stop. And then Rochester turns on him and he's like, come on, stop it.
Yeah.
Rochester,
stop. Rochester, enough.
And so Jet Benny
Rochester, get a hold of yourself.
I love that. There's come on now. And the effects that they use in that sequence, both with Jet Benny's laser gun and also the Rochester vision that they use.
The Rochester vision is wild.
But how do you think that he like achieved it? Like, was he like scratching on the film or
Yes. So what he's doing, this is likely shot.
Flesh Gordon would do those effects too, with the power pasties, and that Dr. Zarkov would have. They would be to scratch the film.
And by the way, there were moments in this where I was like, okay, that's as good an effect as any modern effect, and people wished that
there was a couple of effects that were that way. Yeah,
and there was, I mean, it's quite likely this movie was shot, positive as negative, like they shot like print film to instead of negative film just to save money, or it's possible they just shot it directly if it was on 16, or more than likely it's Super 8. Okay, so Super 8 is half the size. Actually, it's less. The image size is half the size, even smaller than 16 millimeter, which is itself half the size of 35 millimeter, which most people know what 35 millimeter film, the general size of it. Okay, it is tiny. It's the size of like, a pen cap. For a filmmaker to sit there and scratch lasers,
right on,
laser fire into Super 8 to scratch away the emulsion so that you get like a kind of burst of white light coming through, and then to animate it, to slowly animate it. Okay, it takes patience. It takes skill. It takes somebody who understands animation, and Roger Evans clearly knows how to animate, because not only is he doing those scratch effects, he's also doing optical printer effects. Yeah. I mean, or at least rough animation. It's looking like optical printer effects. It's impressive. And that Rochester vision, the death beam, or whatever.
There's like two times I think that we see Rochester vision. One is when he's attacking Jet Benny, and then the other is in that really cool, at least I thought it was really cool, where Rochester is like, you see this, what is it called? Altamira, which is like the city. And then you're seeing it through Rochester's eyes, and it's all this cool animation. And then all of a sudden it cuts to Rochester and he's looking, and then he slowly turns. And as you turn, you see that Jet Benny is looking through the back of his head.
Yeah.
Okay, that was
amazing.
I've never seen that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Whoever came up with that, special gold star for you, my friend, because that was something I had never seen in my life. The fact that he's using his robot like binoculars.
Yeah, he's using Rochester. He's looking through the back of Rochester's head, using his eyes like a periscope in a submarine movie. Or in a submarine.
When you're watching,
as opposed to a submarine movie.
When you're
a submarine movie.
When you're watching science fiction, you kind of hope for like inventive ideas.
Yeah.
And that was like as inventive an idea as I've ever seen in a science fiction movie.
Our asses leaped off the couch. All right, when that happened, because it shocked us. Such a clever image.
Yeah.
The other really cool like effect sequence is that scooter fight. There's these.
Oh my God! Yeah. I haven't even talked about that.
Okay, so to set this up really quick, you guys, there's Commander Shades.
Yeah, Commander Shades. And he flies around in this like chariot type thing.
Multiples of him fly around in these chariot like scooters.
Apparently there's armies of him. Yeah.
It's the same picture but duplicated like with Xerox. With the color Xerox.
He's on this scooter and he's very menacing as he like flies through the air, and he's like, I guess, Lord Zane's like commander. And so in the end, him and Prince Carmen get into this scooter race battle.
It's a complete, almost shot for shot duplication of the scooter chase through the trees and Return of the Jedi with the Ewoks.
And every bit is good.
But with like Barbie dolls.
Yeah, including Barbie dolls matched up with the real guys flying through the air, flying amongst real trees. And then these Barbie dolls attached to these little chariots that are flying through the air. It is so well done. It is so clever. It is so funny. And it's also exciting. Yeah, when it's over, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
Who would have thought a terrific little action scene like that? I mean, the Steven Spielberg who's in The Fabelmans would have bowed his head.
Absolutely.
All right, at that scooter chase.
What makes the speeder chase work in the Star Wars movie is the speed at which it's moving. And they have that in this.
They have it.
You are jamming through that forest. It's fantastic. You are zooming through.
You can tell how they did every effect, but not only does it not ruin the effect, you're blown away by their ingenuity.
Steve Norman's mannerisms have stayed with me. And he has this one line where he actually breaks the fourth wall.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
when he does the mind control on the guards. And then afterwards, Rochester asks him, how did you do that? I think it's Rochester that asks him. And he looks at the camera and he goes, I saw it in a movie.
Yeah.
I just love that.
It's the one time, one time where they are self-aware that we're doing a tape.
And he still
service.
pulls it off, too.
Yeah. I think this movie is like made for like a very specific kind of person. I don't think everyone's going to like run to go watch the Jet Benny show, but like, I don't know. It's
it seems like as if it's made for the people who made it.
Yeah. It's like literally.
And we're invited and we got it.
Yeah.
The thing is, this it's available on YouTube and it's only 77 minutes long. Just put it on and have some fun. I mean, if you don't like it in the first 15 minutes, turn it off and who cares? Yeah. You missed out on a lot of funny things.
But check out an episode of Jack Benny first.
Yeah, exactly.
Just watch one episode.
And and by the way, where we're coming from, we're so charmed by this movie. If you don't like it, we don't give a fuck. All right. We liked it. And we're not even saying you're going to. We're just saying that we appreciate this movie and we appreciate Roger Evans and we appreciate Steve Norman.
I picked up a United Home Video VHS on eBay for $16. And by the way, Roger, there was one thing you did you read this on the back of the box, this picture caption?
I didn't know I had to read all the captions.
Well, Jet Benny, glasses, cape, and courage. The future's most unlikely hero. Just out of his face. I just love it.
And by the way, if you happen to live in Portland, Oregon, you can rent the Jet Benny show at Movie Madness when I return their tape.
People are going to be lining up like, where's that tape, Quentin?
Yeah, what they didn't tell you when they rented it and they told you, oh, just keep it for as long as you like. They didn't tell you about the late fees, did they?
Yeah. They conveniently forgot. Okay, and now it's time for awards.
Okay.
Da-da-da-da. It seems to me the two awards this episode that are going to be tough are Best Lead Actor and Best Director, all right? Because all three of the movies are really, really well directed. Yeah. And all three of the movies have sensational lead performances. I'll start as far as Best Actor is concerned. Now, in the case of George C. Scott, we have a Academy Award winner and a previous Video Archives Best Actor winner for Rage.
Well deserved.
Well deserved. And I thought
and directing himself in that movie.
And directing himself in that film. I thought that I was like, I can't believe I wouldn't give it to George C. Scott in the last run because he's so terrific in it. And I thought after us talking about it, that for sure. But now that we've talked about the Jet Benny show again and had filled it up, I'm going to give Best Actor to Steve Norman as Jet Benny. I'm not taking anything away from either Tom Berenger or George C. Scott, but while I have an opportunity to applaud Steve Norman for his magnificent impersonation of Jack Benny, and not only that, just a good performance nevertheless in this story, I'm giving it to my boy Steve. Roger.
I'm with you.
Really?
100%.
Wow.
And I wasn't even humming and hawing about George C. Scott.
Mm-hmm.
I love George C. Scott, and I love him in
you love him in this movie, yeah.
And frankly, I think Tom Berenger does a terrific job.
Absolutely.
But Steve Norman, standing on the shoulders of Jack Benny, achieves a height.
Yes.
That is just absolutely impressive, not because he's impersonating, because he's embodying.
Yeah.
And he's embodying it into what everyone keeps calling a spoof, but what I kind of feel is like a little loving tribute.
It is. No, it absolutely. Well, the best,
and that doesn't happen without that love that he's giving it.
No, the best spoofs are always wrapped up in affection, not snark.
Yeah. Exactly. That's very well put.
We're all in agreement.
All right.
We did it. I mean,
Let's give applause to Steve Norman.
Yeah,
he deserves it. He deserves it. Well done, Mr. Norman. Well done. Okay. So as hard as the decision is for Best Actor, it's pretty puny for Best Actress. I actually think Trish Van Devere is the only person that actually qualifies as a Best Lead Actress, except possibly Princess Miranda.
Polly McIntyre.
I don't love Trish Van Devere in the movie, but I think she's effective. I would give it to her.
I don't know. I'm going to give it to, I think, my lady Polly McIntyre. I think she did a good job. She played like the 50s girl really well, and then she played Princess Miranda really well.
So how about you, Roger?
You know, I was considering Sailor Ward.
Yeah, I don't know if she would qualify as Best Actress, but if you want to give her Best Actress, go ahead.
But I think I'm going to follow your lead, Quentin.
Oh, okay.
Playing this kind of woman in control.
Yeah.
I think she was great.
Yeah,
she is really good in it.
She did a good job. Yeah, I'm being a bitch. All right. Yeah, she's fine. She's terrific.
I'm sticking with Polly, though.
I also wanted to throw out Robert Colby as the hitchhiker guy. I actually really liked that guy.
Yeah, I did too.
I want to throw that guy out there.
That's the Roger guy. Not that he's like you, but that's like somebody you would know.
Yeah. Well, I like him. And he's like this guy.
That's like you directed a movie, you stick with some guy you used to hang out with 20 years ago and playing that part.
He is a prolific TV actor. He's in everything. That guy.
Okay. So now we come to Best Supporting Actor. And I'm going with Patrick Wayne.
I'm going...
That's a good choice.
C.W.
Oh, C.W. Bailey.
Yeah, C.W. Bailey. That would be my choice. Because he made me... Every line of his was like the good line in that script.
Yeah. Like, okay, I'll just get my drunk outfit out of the bag. I'll get off this stupid sidekick outfit. That's okay. I got my drunk outfit in the bag.
Didn't throw it away quite yet.
You know what? I think I'm going to go with Bailey as well.
Okay, good deal.
What I like about Bailey is he's the character who's undergoing a kind of true transformation.
Yeah.
He's realizing his world. He's transitioning from drunk to sidekick. That's a noble journey he's on.
I find him terrible in the Police Academy movies, but he's really good in this one, I have to say. But my hatred for him in the Police Academy movies dies hard. Okay, and now finally, Best Supporting Actress.
Who plays the whore in The Last Run?
That's Colleen Dewhurst.
Yeah, Colleen Dewhurst.
Colleen Dewhurst.
Who was George C. Scott's ex-wife.
Oh my God.
He stars He stars his ex-wife and he stars his future wife in the same movie.
No way.
Wait. Was she already his ex-wife?
Yeah, she was his ex-wife.
Was she already his future wife?
No. They met on the movie. They got married after.
Oh my God. Is that awkward? Or is that normal in the life of George C. Scott?
Well, I think, like I said, I think she was his ex-wife when they did Last Run.
That's awesome because
By the way, I think George C. Scott is the only person who would ever cast Colleen Dewhurst as a whore.
The scene between him and Colleen Dewhurst has some of my favorite dialogue in the entire film.
Oh, it's got great dialogue. Oh, well. And the reveal about the love letter, it was one of Alan Sharp's best. I don't want to make the reveal. Yeah. But the reveal about the love letter is one of Alan Sharp's great touches in the dialogue. I think
they have such good sentimentalism between them that I felt so emotionally connected to George C. Scott because of her performance.
I agree with you.
Right off the bat.
I agree with you. You would laugh? You would laugh at the prayers of a whore?
I have it. It was so good that I wrote this down.
Okay, write it.
Let me find it. I have it word for word. You think it would be no good for a whore to pray for you. It's so good. Do you guys agree? Who would you guys go for Best Supporting Actress?
I think that's a great case you made for Colleen Dewhurst.
I think you made a great case for Colleen Dewhurst. I probably should follow both the Averys' leads, but
always you should.
I'm going to give it to Celia Ward. All right, I actually think Celia Ward.
She's really good in it. She's funny.
Yeah, in fact, she's so funny that they drop her character in the last half hour, and you miss her.
Yeah.
And when she has that funny joke at the end, you're like, well, where the fuck has she been for the last 20 fucking minutes?
Absolutely true.
Okay, now we come to the second hardest one, but I think I know the answer. Best Director.
You know, this one's really hard, actually, because you have Fleischer, in my opinion, who does, like, an excellent job picking up this movie. But then you have, like, Roger Evans, who's, like, drawing on the film and, animating the things.
It has to be said that to be
it's almost unfair to compare the two of them. It's unfair to each of them.
Yeah.
All right,
it's not all three.
It's not like it's unfair to Roger Evans to compare it to The Last Run. It's unfair to compare The Last Run to Chad Benny.
Absolutely. So having said that, there is one guy who was sitting there in his room in his underwear, scratching frame after frame, 24 frame for each second that he had to do.
Sitting in his room, in his underwear, in his own filth, reeking of his own stink.
And not only that, but the ingenuity of this film, all of the gags, And then on top of it, to allow Steve Norman to just do Steve Norman and do Jet Benny. He gives him that freedom. Okay, I'm going with Roger Evans.
So you know how much I love Fleischer. He stands on his own. He doesn't need me to prop him up. He doesn't need me to give him an award. However, Roger Evans, the other Roger out there, toiling in obscurity. That guy needs to hear this. Dude, you did it.
Well, as absolutely convincing as the Averys have been in this. And by the way, I loved every second of it because I couldn't agree more with the sentiment. I will stand up for Hollywood professionalism.
That is, by the way, completely legit. No, there's no argument for me.
That is as legit as everything you said and everything you guys said was legit.
That's exactly why it's unfair to compare these two films, is because both arguments cancel the other out.
They do.
They're equal but opposite.
They neutralize each other. I will give best editing to Russell Lloyd.
Yeah.
Of The Last Run.
I would give best editing to Last Run as well. How about you, Gala?
Yeah. Also, by the way, that scene that you mentioned about the editing with the car.
Yeah.
I actually gasped out loud when I saw it.
Yeah.
I went, I actually covered my eyes because it was so visceral. And then I went back and I watched it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Roger Manley, we got to go back. We got to go back and watch how they did that.
Yeah.
And I was almost like, I don't want to even ruin it. But then it was even better because you could see how they did it.
Yeah.
All right. You could see how specific it was.
I got one for you, Quentin and Roger. Best box of the night.
Ooh.
I actually really loved The Last Run, both box and the album cover and the poster. It's so iconic. I also love the Jet Benny one.
I'm going to go with Rustlers Rhapsody personally.
Okay. Here's the thing. I probably would pick the Last Run box if it wasn't this cut up version of it. If it
wasn't a bootleg?
Yeah. If it were a normal MGM box, this would be the winner. But since it's a Xerox and it's like a little off and the end is cut off and you don't see his whole hand here. I would agree with that. I would go with Rustlers Rhapsody.
Well, the thing about Rustlers Rhapsody is
best box, yeah.
It has a beautiful popping look to it. You've got Tom Berenger.
But I also like the fact that it's not like ridiculous. Hey, let's show you that this is a silly movie and have like a bunch of silly comedy shit in there. No, this looks like legit.
What's weird is there's plenty of space on the top and on the bottom to put taglines and other things.
Yeah,
and they leave them blank.
It's nice and clean. But you do see him standing up in the saddle.
That's a nice touch.
Yeah.
Cinematography?
Let me go with screenplay next. Okay, so best screenplay. Well, to me, that's Alan Sharp.
Yeah, that's Alan Sharp.
And we're talking
Agreed.
about we're talking about two good screenplays as well, and especially Rustlers Rhapsody is really good. But Alan Sharp all the way.
I mean, it's close, but it goes to Alan Sharp.
Yeah. And when it comes to cinematography, I think
it's Sven Nykvist.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But pretty much, I would say every other technical award goes to Jet Benny, just for the fact that they exist.
Yeah, the existence award. Best film.
Last Run.
Yeah, for as much as I love the Jet Benny show and the laughter it brought me, I know the Last Run is going to be what I return to watch again. I even give it a little heart in my notebook to remind me to like it online.
Yeah, I would say best film also goes to Last Run. Last Run is, it's a magnificent big movie that seems to have fallen through the cracks a little bit. As much as Steve Norman is the reason for Jet Benny to exist, and that Tom Berenger is in many ways how Rustlers Rhapsody can even exist, because he is that.
He has to pull it off. Yeah.
He's got to pull that off. There is no Last Run without George C. Scott.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. No, I don't know if I agree with that.
Rod Steiger.
You actually talked yourself out of the fucking point, because a lot of, like Charles Bronson could have played this character. I can see in 1971 James Coburn playing this role, and I can see in 1971, especially talking about 1971, I can see Charles Bronson playing the role. And no, they don't have those things you're talking about, but I wouldn't be asking for that if they were playing it, because I would be enjoying them.
It'd be a different movie.
Yeah. But your point is that there is a poignant resonance that George C. Scott brings to the performance that probably would not be there as embedded in the character for Bronson and Coburn.
He wants to make this statement.
Yeah. Just like the character wants to make a statement.
Yeah.
I just want to do it well. I just want to do it well.
Yeah.
Video Archives Podcast is hosted by Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery and produced by Josh Richmond and Kala Avery. Our executive producers are Colin Anderson and Natalie Muallim. Find out more about the show by heading to videoarchivespodcast.com. Have you ever wanted to hear Mick Garris discuss the differences between original source material and the movies they become? Or Joe Russo's favorite gateways into horror? What about author Max Brooks and how he thinks that Minecraft will literally save humanity? Join me, reporter on the beat Gala Avery, as I get to the bottom of these topics on my new show, The Gala Show. In this weekly podcast, guests from Los Angeles and beyond have 30 minutes on the clock to bring whatever topic they want to the mic. So, tune in every Thursday for a new guest with an entirely new topic. The first episode drops October 26th, available wherever you get your podcasts.